Hey guys, Tarke here, and today I am joined by Sam Keats, the solo developer of Sanctum Breach Rebirth. I last got together with Sam 2 years ago to talk about Sanctum Breach. So Sam, introduce yourself and why we now back together in sort of like a pre-beta stage.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Sam Keats, solo developer for Sanctum Breach. About 3 years ago, I was trying this for the first time. Ran into some issues with my former publisher. I won't bore you with the details, but they're out there if you want to find out where to avoid publishers. Um, since then, I've decided to completely remake the game from scratch. So everything that you're seeing today is completely reworked and recoded. Um, yeah, so getting ready to head into Steam Early Access now. So just trying to get as many eyes on the project as possible.
So last time we got together, you were doing a Kickstarter. Is this just going to be launched into early access and run that way, or are you going to be doing any crowdfunding, or what's the plan there?
Yeah, so obviously the original Kickstarter was successful, but since then I've obviously had to use the funds to get back to this stage. But I'm not interested in doing crowdfunding again because I kind of felt like people have already paid for the product. You know, they've already funded it, and just because I have problems on my end, regardless of like, how much of the blame I take in that, it's sort of like I felt like people would deserve know it coming back to the point where they left off. Um, so I would say the game is probably at around the same stage, if not better than prior. So and everyone that's already backed the game or bought the game on Steam will get it for free when it releases to early
Okay, so that's
access.
good. So with the build that's going to be available the next couple of days, we've got 3 classes, right? Do you want to maybe like break down what's going on there?
Yeah, so I've gone for a Grim Dawn sort of approach where it's dual trees. So there's 3 base classes at the moment. So you've got the warrior skill tree, hunter skill tree, and mage skill tree, and then they combine to create sort of like a class. So in this case, we've got elementalist, which is a hunter tree and the mage tree together. Battle mage, which is warrior and mage tree together, and then the warden, which is the warrior and hunter
Yeah.
tree together. Um, so then the next time I add a skill tree, obviously the classes will jump up dramatically because then there'll be 4 sort of base trees to choose from.
Okay, so I'm going to give the warden a shot, and as I go through everything, we'll just sort of see what's what. So let's see what's what. Offline. So you can see there's host and join. So is there going to be like multiplayer available from the get-go, or?
Yeah, so in terms of multiplayer, I've coded everything with multiplayer in mind. But for those that don't know, sort of like the biggest issues with multiplayer isn't really the code itself. It's the overheads. It's having a dedicated server. It's having all of that sort of infrastructure behind you, which costs sort of like a lot of money, and it needs to be continuous revenue as well because you're paying daily for all this sort of stuff. So the game is ready for multiplayer, but I'm
Fair
not.
enough.
Essentially, yeah.
And there are 3 difficulty modes, but normal's just the only one to start with, right?
Yeah. So you have to complete normal, and then you unlock brutal. Do brutal, you unlock
Okay.
nightmare.
Ooh. Start. Let me start normal. Have I not unlocked normal?
Well, we've been playtesting for what, about 5 months. I don't think I've ever seen this bug, and then the first time you play it.
Like, I'll say it's my fault. We'll say it's my fault. Let me.
Yeah, close it down.
Oh,
Try again. I reckon.
hang on. I think I fixed it. I just had to click. I wasn't clicking hard enough. That was the problem. There we go. I fixed
Oh, there
it.
we go. Cool.
When in doubt,
Yeah,
it is
it's
always
clicking
a big
outside.
issue. Now there are some very slight clipping issues, but that's just like being in pre-beta, right?
Yeah. So obviously, like, in terms of testing, um, obviously I've been testing it myself, and then I've had some help testing it as well. So like I've got a really dedicated tester, Justin. He's been playing sort of like all day, every day, trying to find as many bugs as possible. But it's just when you've got 2 people testing, sort of like an ARPG with 3 classes and an entire campaign, is kind of like you're not going to find everything.
So is that obviously by having more players, you're going to have access to like more available testers? What's going to be?
Yeah.
Is that going to be like the main benefit of opening up to the public? Would you say?
Yeah. So the way that I kind of view early access in this regard is sort of like, obviously I'm opening it up to more people, so more people are going to be playing the game, we're going to find more bugs. So then I'll do sort of like a bug patch in which I fix everything that people have found. Then I'll do a content patch, which will probably break everything again. So we just keep doing that until all the content's in and all the bugs.
Fair enough.
Are dead.
Before I run around killing monsters and stuff, so you've got a item system with like stat requirements. You maybe want to just like talk about what the different stats do and what was your thought process and like how you came to this kind of setup.
Yeah, sure. So there's 4 attributes: strength, dexterity, endurance, and wisdom. So you've got sort of the heavy gear is the strength requirements. Then the lighter sort of gear is dexterity, and then the cloth gear is wisdom. So it's sort of like following the traditional RPG sort of archetype of like the warrior, the hunter, and the mage sort of thing. And then in terms of endurance, it's just a requirement that you need to wear jewelry. But I didn't want it to be a case of sort of like Diablo 2 where you have to get like X amount of strength to wear your in-game gear and then everything else is dumped into a single stat. So I've incorporated bonuses into skills. I don't know if you want to jump ahead and open up the skill tree just by pressing S. And then, stream delay. If you hover over one of the active skills, so it's the ones with the square borders, you'll see that they've got attribute bonuses. So every skill has a different attribute bonus. So the higher you pump a certain attribute, it'll have an impact upon the skills that you're using, as well as providing their own sort of like default buffs and being a requirement for wearing gear.
And then so currently it's going to be like a dual class tree. As you said, when like maybe if you introduce like more classes, will it then be kind of like Titan Questy where you're picking them, which one you're getting?
No, so I'm always going to have it so that the classes are sort of predetermined in character, because I felt like the issue with sort of Grim Dawn and Titan Quest was that you didn't have really an overview from character select about what you were going to be playing. It was sort of on the fly, and while that worked in some regards, I feel like this way it's more an informed choice right from the beginning.
So what made you? Because obviously a lot of the inspo is very like Grim Dawn and sort of Titan Quest. I feel like when it comes to a lot of people trying to like go and take elements from games like Diablo 2 or Grim Dawn, what kind of made you focus on those older ARPGs rather than looking at more modern like Diablo 3 or Path of Exile for inspiration?
So I would say that I think while the modern ARPGs have done things well in their own way, I don't feel like they're as solid a base to copy from. I feel like if someone tried to copy Path of Exile, it would just go horrendously wrong, because obviously like Path of Exile was built upon sort of the foundations of Diablo 2, and then they put their own spin on it. So if I was to outright copy Path of Exile, I would have to copy the foundations of Diablo 2, copy what Path of Exile has done on those foundations, then copy what they've done to create their own spin, and then try and put my own spin on it. So I feel like you're too far down the rabbit hole then, and I don't know. I feel like Path of Exile is sort of like a bit of a freak accident because it's sort of I don't know how you can create an ARPG that's so rapid in its gameplay and have it all make sense in your head before people have played it. It sort of naturally got to that stage. And I feel like to try and design that from the ground up without a player base, without it naturally evolving into that, it just wouldn't work. And then in terms of like sort of like Diablo 3, I think the only thing I like about Diablo 3 is how polished it is. So yeah. There's nothing really that I want to take from Diablo.
And speaking of Diablo, when's the mobile port coming for Sanctum Breach Rebirth?
June the 3rd, one day after Diablo Immortal.
Ooh, that's a big skeleton. Okay, so I've noticed that some of these attacks have got like cleave with the auto. Out of interest,
Yeah.
how difficult is putting? Is that something you'll see with like a lot of the melee skills where you got like inbuilt cleave naturally, or?
Yeah, so single target has its place, right? But I feel like if you're playing a melee build and you get surrounded by like sort of a pack of enemies, you don't want to be killing them one by one. So it's sort of like there are a couple of single target skills, but they are designed specifically for sort of fighting bosses. I don't like basic attacks personally. I like with the original Sanctum Breach, I didn't even have a basic attack. You just started off with a skill. But I felt like this time around, I wanted to sort of follow the path a bit more. You know, try and do things that people have already laid out, just so everyone feels a bit more comfortable with the game.
So I can already see some like dialogue stuff here. How much of the focus of this campaign is on story? Is there like a set story there? Is it just a means to the end to get to endgame?
It's a means to an end. I can care less about story, to be honest with you. Yeah, no, I'm all about the gameplay. You know, like if you want a story, go play Final Fantasy.
Right. Use the scroll in your inventory to teleport. Ooh, okay. So, the zone transitions in this game, is it going to be lots of things like using items to go backwards and forwards? Is it like a big open map? How's the kind of zoning work?
So it's sort of like traditional zones, just sort of I suppose it's like Path of Exile in that sense. You know, it's all just zones. You've got waypoints, and then sometimes you'll have scrolls. Yeah, it's mostly waypoint based.
Okay. And then, so you say that the campaign is very much just like a means to the end. So how long is the campaign currently?
Not overly long. Obviously, it depends on how experienced you are, but I would say maybe about 6 hours, all in all. It really does just depend on how fast you want to get through it. I mean, if you've got a teleport skill and you know where to go on the map, you can clear a zone in sort of like 2 minutes.
And what content's going to be in the early access when it comes available?
So as soon as it's available, you'll have the whole campaign and all 3 difficulties. I think that's sort of enough for people to be getting on with initially. But the first content patch will be endgame content. I'm not taking anything from Diablo 3. I'm going to use the Inferno slider sort of scale. So you'll be able to play through the campaign on Inferno difficulty and then collect like set items and all that sort of stuff. And then on top of that, there's going to be a Path of Exile sort of skill tree that I'm currently working on, but it's only for endgame content and it's tied to a bounty system. So you'll get a bounty and you'll have to go throughout the world and try and find a boss, kill the boss, and you get a point to spend in the tree rather than it just being from sort of like leveling up. And then there'll be a bunch of other endgame content as well, like like maps, arenas, boss fights, all the stuff that was in the original Sanctum Breach.
Right, so we've leveled up, we've got some attribute points to spend, and we've got some skill points to spend. So looking at it, we're seeing that, as you said earlier, you need to upgrade different stats to get different levels of gear equipped, and then strength increases our base damage, dex is movement speed and AoE, endurance is life and all res, wisdom is mana and spell damage. For new players coming into the beta, is this going to be a situation of I get strength every level? Would you recommend like a mix of strength and endurance, or?
Yeah, no. So if you don't get any endurance, by the time you get into Nightmare, you're going to be crying into your pillow, and there's no way to reset attributes. So I would really recommend people not treating it like Diablo 2. Don't dump everything into one attribute, because you're going to limit yourself on gear. You need 120 points to wear tier 12 gear, which you start finding at the end of Nightmare. because each act introduces a new tier of gear, and each new tier of gear has new stats on it. So you're going to want to be into those tiers, because otherwise you're going to be missing out on like life leech, mana leech, all that sort of stuff. So I would say sort of give it a bit of an even spread to begin with, at least on your first playthrough, and then you know where you can sort of where you can put points to them.
So you say that you don't have respecs. Now, that's been like a big debate when it comes to old school ARPGs versus newer ones. Why did you decide on going for a lock spec setup?
So I think ARPGs are about choice, right? And if you make the wrong choice, you have to live with that. You have to sort of like try and make the best of it. I feel like if you remove that element of choice, you're sort of you're veering away from the choice mattering. If you can just reset it, it doesn't really matter what you do. However, I'm not as strict as I was in the previous Sanctum Breach. So if you hover over the skills in the skill tree, you'll notice you can put points in and out of them. And it doesn't have a cost to do that. So you can reset your skills, but you can't reset your attributes. And then with the end game skill tree, Tempest of Echoes, you'll be able to reset the entire tree, but it'll be like a hefty cost. So I've kind of like I've gone for that sort of that middle ground where I've got one of each. So one where you can't reset, one that you can reset for free, and then one that has a cost involved.
Fair enough. So since this is kind of like a Grim Dawn Titan Quest style of skill trees, there's going to be a situation where like I put 5 points into like warrior, and then I can start putting points into the skills. Is that kind of how it works?
Yeah, so the skills line up with the numbers underneath. So you need 1 point invested to unlock the first sort of like tier of skills, and then 5, 10, 15, etc.
Alright, so we've got strike a target with the vicious blow, launch blade, 10 chances of base attacks to do an arc of fire. That sounds kind of cool. Multi-shot, chance to grow itself, movement speed buff, summon companions. Let's go for warrior tree. So we'll put 1 point in here. So now in theory I can start getting, yeah, cool. So we can max this out, take this all down at any point. That's nice. Let's go. Let's try. Okay. So now that I've got a skill, how do I like equip my skills? Do I have to like drag it from here?
No, yeah. Just from the skill tree itself, you just left click it and it'll hover up, and then you can pop it on.
And then...
Yeah, I did sort of toy with the idea of having it where you sort of like click the bar itself. I know like a lot of games do that, and then you assign it to the slot. But I felt like this way it was a bit easier when you're changing things around. A bit faster.
And then what's the keybind to use that automatically? I'm pressing 1.
It's 1. Yeah, it's 1, but you can't use it. You haven't got a spear. You've got
Okay, we'll get a spear then.
Yeah, I wanted to go down the route of having weapon requirements on skills, because I feel like that's obviously something taken from Path of Exile as well. I think it really helps with being able to optimize builds, and with being able to balance builds.
Well, you also get like more identity
as
well behind each thing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I feel like if you can use any skill with any weapon, it's just sort of grab the best stat stick and go with it.
Because I can respec that, I can get rid of that. Haha. Okay, so does Punish require a spear? I'm hoping not.
What? I hover over it.
Reading? Oh god. Sword, axe, hammer, or spear. Okay, to be fair, it did say that is on me. It does actually say. Okay, fair enough. Okay, so.
If you want a personal recommendation, I love Punish, but once you've got to the end of the line, you can make it an AoE, and it just messes everything up. It's cool. I like it.
I can press buttons now. So, you've kind of gone for an old school mana approach. Again, the way that people handle like mana and cooldowns, what made you settle for this when it came to Sanctum Breach Rebirth?
Yeah, so I think mana is an important stat, and it's sort of one that people undervalue in terms of what it actually brings to the table, because it's a resource, right? You have to control it, and if you don't control it, you're going to be punished. I feel like it's good to have that sort of like a restraint upon the player, and they have to find a way to break free of that. Where it's like mana leech, it's like reducing the cost of the skill. It's like mana per hit. Anything that sort of like removes it as a constraint and then potentially makes it a plus, because obviously I'm going to have like auras that reserve your total mana pool, and then skills that scale their damage based off your max mana, things like that. So it's just another tool to play with. And obviously there's cooldowns on some skills as well, and cooldown reduction and all that sort of stuff.
I've noticed that I've been picking up like crafting materials and consumable items. What's the thought process with crafting in this game?
So there's crafting in the most traditional sense, where there is an item filter already in the game. If you want to check it out, you just press escape. Sorry,
Yeah.
just responding to chat. Yeah, so in terms of crafting, you can craft like base items. So if you get a couple of materials, you can craft, I don't know, like a cloth garb, and it might be normal, it might be magic, it might be rare, it might be legendary, you know? So you've got that sort of like gambling sort of craft. And there's also rune word crafting, in which you find the ruins and you find base materials, and then you can craft unique items, like directly from the crafter. Every town that you visit, there's a blacksmith anvil. So the next time we're in town, you can check it out, and I'll go a bit more in depth. And we've got the visual in front of us.
Have we found our first bug? Have we got a tooltip stuck on the screen?
Yeah, just drop something and then hover over it again.
Oh, I need to... Oh, loot filters OP. There we go. So the fact that you've put a loot filter into the base options is really nice, because that's something that I get a lot of when it comes to playing the older games. Having to download add-ons and mods to get that stuff working is always really frustrating.
Yeah, no, I want to keep everything in-game as much as possible. Yes, it's possible to craft best in slot if you've got really good luck and you craft a nice legendary. And something that I've done as well, there's a magic find stat in the game, and magic find applies to crafting. It also applies to vendors as well. So you can have like a magic find crafting character that you do all your crafting
on. So if the magic find set is mostly going to be coming from, I imagine, items, how do you feel about the idea of people having like a stash set of gear which they feel like they have to swap into every time they want to craft?
So it will be coming from gear, but it'll also be coming from your Tempest of Echoes tree, because that'll have a lot of sort of like unique nodes on it that you don't necessarily find on items. It'll have like keystones as well. It'll essentially be a Path of Exile sort of like passive tree. So you'll want points in that if you want a proper dedicated crafter.
Fair enough. So how much focus do you see in terms of, or maybe a better way of phrasing it is, so in a lot of games you can have the situation where the best items are only ever found on the floor and you're just like constantly running the same boss over and over and over again. Other games, crafting is the best source. In this game, where is the balance? Is it more crafting focused, more loot dropping focused?
So ideally it's going to be 50-50, you know. So I'll have unique items and set items that are target farmable from certain bosses and certain areas, right? So there'll be that element of it if you want to go down that route. But then obviously you can craft as well. So crafting is more sort of luck based, I suppose, apart from crafting specific items. So basically I just want to make it that no matter what element of the game you're focusing on, you're going to get rewarded in some way. I don't ever want it to be sort of a dead element. I want people to be able to play whatever kind of game they want and get rewarded and be able to progress. I feel like too often ARPGs sort of force you into doing a certain activity, even if you don't want to be doing it. I feel like it should be the player's choice, and then we'll see what RNG has in store for them.
That's fair. So, coming from the point of view of someone who's, been through the cycle again, you've said that you built Sanctum Breach, had your issues, I know you've worked on other games, and now you've come to this one. Have there been like any core like ARPG fundamentals that you feel like your opinions changed on, or have it always been the same vision from day one?
I don't feel like my fundamentals have changed. I feel like people's approaches to ARPGs have changed. I don't feel like players play them in the same way anymore. And I feel like as a developer, you sort of have to adapt to that. I feel like it's pointless trying to sort of like fight against the grain, as it were. If people want to play in a certain way, you have to facilitate that. Otherwise, no one's going to be playing your game, so there's no point making it. Yeah, I think I'm probably quite a niche ARPG player. I like the really sort of hardcore 16 hours a day, every day kind of approach to it. And I don't really feel like people play in that way anymore. Obviously, I would say you're obviously, part of the exception as well as a streamer, but I don't think the majority of people have that approach anymore. They don't want to be grinding for 6 months to reach level 100, or 99 in the case of Diablo 2. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I'm just trying to keep a bit more of an open mind this time around. I feel like last time I was very sort of strict on my vision, whereas this time I want to sort of not sell out or anything like that, but just sort of be more adaptable and more open to people's ideas.
Okay. So with that in mind, and obviously you're mostly looking to get more players in to be collecting more sort of feedback. I know with the previous game you were doing a lot of user-based suggestions going on. Like I remember you had like a nemesis system at one point with when enemies kill you they became stronger. Is that something that's still in this game?
No, it's not currently in the game, no. I've sort of changed my approach to death as well in this game. When you die, you go back to the hub, because I felt like that was a more traditional sort of ARPG approach that people were more used to. And obviously, like this time around, you've got waypoints that you can collect. So I feel like if you just respawn at the start of the zone, it kind of nullifies that idea of waypoints as being sort of your safety net.
Right, so I'm looking for this shark. So what's the deal? Are these auras that are then buffing the nearby enemies? These big things here?
Yeah. So you've got normal enemies, magic enemies, and rare enemies. The magic enemies get a 50% buff to their stats. Rare enemies get 100%, and then they get special affects as well. Just like Diablo, just like Path of Exile, And then the higher difficulty that you're in, the more diverse the affix pool is. So you'll encounter new things each difficulty.
And as you go up the difficulties, will you start seeing stuff like immunities coming in, or how do you feel about immunities generally?
So I know this is not a popular opinion, but I really like the idea of having to focus on more than one element in your build. I think that sort of like, going all in on fire damage, for example, it's okay, but it's just a bit boring, It's sort of like, oh, what am I getting on gear this time? Oh, look, more fire damage, So I think having to really think about your build and be able to tackle different threats is something quite interesting. So I'm not going to have straight up immunities like I did last time, but enemies will definitely be more resistant and more capable of dealing with certain playstyles. So you will need to adapt to that. Like the bounty system that I talked about briefly. So this is obviously tied to the Tempest of Echoes. So these are bosses you have to be able to kill, right? Otherwise you're not going to get points. You're going to be pathetic and weak. So each boss is uses some of the player skills. So you might have a boss that uses sort of like Berserk stance, which is like a spin to win, and then they also got like a righteous flames, sort of like fire aura. So they're designed to kill a specific type of character, kind of like what was that map in Path of Exile? You know where is people's characters?
Hall of Grandmasters.
The unique.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like that. So they are essentially player characters designed to kill other player characters. So you will need to find a ways to combat that, because otherwise you won't be able to do the certain bounty, and then you'll have to spend a ton of gold buying a new bounty. So yeah, not straight up immunities, no sort of like crazy damage reflector one shots you, stuff like that. Because I feel like getting randomly one shot out of nowhere isn't fun. Like so, but just stuff that makes you think, that makes you tweak your build in order to be able to beat a certain encounter.
And then for the campaign, how is the... Ooh, did I get a legendary then? Ooh.
You did.
How is the generation? Is it set generation for levels and enemies? Is it procedural or?
So the zone generation is set. However, some endgame maps won't be. They'll be procedural. The enemies are sort of set, but they have a range in which they can spawn. So sometimes you'll get a pack of 3, where other times you might get like a pack of 6. And that scale intensifies the higher up in the difficulties you go. Yeah, so it's a little bit of both, but I would say it's mostly static.
So okay, so I've just gotten Devour, so I no longer cause bleed. So if I was to then take bleed, how does that work? Is that damage just added as bonus damage? What's that mean?
Yeah, so if you take Devour, your punish can't cause enemies to bleed, but you get like a life leech and you get the damage. But if you check the last node in the tree, in the punish chain, sorry, so the one after bleed, lacerated soul, enemies that are already bleeding when hit by punish, they'll rupture. That's the really cool one. That gives you AoE, so you turn your single target into an AoE. So you're not going to want Devour if you've got Lacerated Soul, because otherwise you're going to deal no damage. Devour is sort of like I'm fighting big bosses, I need some life leech, and then Lacerated Soul is like, oh, you're all weak, AoE, let's go, sort of approach. I tried to do that with a lot of skills, give them sort of like multiple facets, so you can take them in whatever direction you feel is lacking.
Yeah, I do actually really like the approach of letting people mess around with skills, because that's one thing that I remember specifically when I played the original version of this. I was playing some ice node. It was like a poison nova or something, and I saw a node that I thought would be really cool. I took it, and I'm like, this doesn't behave the way I thought it would, and I'm like, I've got to make a new build. So I like the idea of being locked into your attributes, but then being able to mess around with your skills itself. So I am very happy that you've made that slight concession there.
Yeah. I think it's difficult in ARPGs as well, isn't it? Because the way that you expect something to work isn't always the way it's going to work, because there's so many complicated terms and they're so math-based, there's a lot of room for misconception, I suppose. So the best way to sort of know if you like a skill is sit down and play with it, I think.
I think one of my favorite things with these sort of games is when you see a random skill or an item, you don't really read it, but you think you've read it. You then spend 10 hours planning the perfect build. You get all the items together.
Yeah.
You do the first, and you're like, oh, it doesn't work this way. Never mind.
The amount of times that happened to me in Path of Exile, especially
Path of Exile, really bad
because
for it,
the wording is so and they've got 5 ways of expressing the same thing, so it's but then they all interact differently with other things as well, so it's praise Path of building.
So that's actually one thing that I wanted to mention in reference to this then. So Pee-wee is the game which really struggles with keeping its phrasing consistent. What have you done to try and keep that consistent in this game?
Copy Path of Exile and people can learn about that instead. No. I do have the Path of Exile sort of less and more and increased and decreased approach, because that's become so sort of universal now with a lot of ARPG players. I felt like rather than trying to make up my own sort of lingo, I'll just use one that's already established. But No, I just try and be as consistent across the board as possible. So like if I say burning, it always means burning. If I say sort of like shocked, it always means shocked. Um, yeah, just trying to be consistent, reading my own tooltips, making sure that I'm saying the same thing twice.
So this is made in Unreal, right? Unreal 5?
Unreal 4.
Out of interest, what made you pick Unreal as the go-to?
It's the only one I know. Yeah, it's what I learned at university, so it's just what I stuck with. And yeah, it's just become the best, really. I think as well, especially in terms of what's out there for support. Like the marketplace. Like being able to use the Megascan assets for free. Like the whole world is built with Megascan assets. And if I gone down the CryEngine route like they did with like Vulkan, I would have had to buy all of them. So yeah, it's just really good for solo dev.
I think that's also one thing that if you in the future ever did want to scale up or even just like bring on one or two other people, having it be an engine that people have experience in rather than it being your own built thing solves so many potential headaches.
Oh yeah, definitely, of course, yeah. No, it's much easier in that regard as well. And like I know a lot of devs in Unreal now as well, just like working on their own games, like ARPGs or whatever, so we can sort of like help each other. Yeah, it's just easier for collaboration in any regard. And
with collaboration in mind, have you had much conversation with the guys from like Last Epoch or any of the other like indie RPGs out there at the moment?
Yeah, so I spoke to the guys at Last Epoch quite a lot. With the original Sanctum Breach, they helped put the Kickstarter together and stuff like that. Just gave me advice on that sort of side of things. But I haven't spoken to them recently, no. I mostly sort of speak to people that are in development, I guess, would be the best way to phrase it.
I know that the focus is more so on like the core gameplay or anything, but when it comes to the like actual setting for this, what was your inspiration for going what seems to be like fairly like European Tolkien-esque kind of fantasy sort of?
Yeah, so obviously I love Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, as every person in our circle does. Yeah, so it's mostly just sticking with what you know. ARPGs always tend to go down the sort of like dark fantasy route with, all the gore and the different environments, like forests and mountains and snow regions, desert regions. So I think it's one of those things where if you veer too much away from it, it becomes very jarring for people. And as much as people say they want to see something different, I think if you actually presented them with something different, they probably wouldn't like it. Yeah, it's just a safe bet, isn't it? It's consistent. Everyone knows they like it, so I don't really see a need to change it.
That's fair. I think specifically with some of the like more older school like CRPGs and ARPGs, the audiences really are like, this is what I like. There's some quite interesting conversations from the people who made Pillars of Eternity when they were trying to like veer away from some of the like traditional, we must have this many stats in this setting. People got really angry, so I could definitely see that.
Oh, yeah, you get crucified for it. Like, I mean, this is a genre people with. It's a genre they've been playing for 20 odd years. They don't want to suddenly log in and everything's in neon pink and you're running around with lightsabers and stuff. Like it's just, yeah, people know what they like.
So we have a few comments on it. So the inventory, is this going to like infinitely scale, or is this just like the way it goes down to here, or what made you go for that inventory size?
I think inventory management is a term that gets thrown around a lot as sort of an excuse,
okay.
in a way. So I don't think being able to fit a bunch of items in a 10 by 10 grid or whatever it is a particular sort of like skill. And I think having a large inventory, it doesn't slow down gameplay. It you know, it just facilitates gameplay. It's not fun to get halfway through a map and realize you've run out of room and you've got to teleport back to town. So I just scaled all the gold costs and everything associated with items with having a large inventory and stash in mind. So the stash is the same as well. It's like that scrollable sort of like design. Yeah, it just made sense to me to have it.
Right, let's try out this rupture. This isn't the coolest thing ever. I'm ending this into right here. Okay. Let's go.
Oh yeah.
Ooh, okay, yeah, that's pretty strong. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, what's cool about this as well is it scales with the amount of enemies you're hitting because they shotgun basically. So the radius of hitting one enemy overlaps with another, and then it sort of builds up this chain effect.
I mean, I just got another legendary, so it must be good, right? With that in mind, so we've got 2 legendaries quite early on. How big is the legendary pool in this game? Is it going to be a case like you're constantly raining in them? Is it going to be more like once a day, or?
No, you will get legendaries. It's single player, so it's like, I don't want people to be grinding for a month to find one legendary and they can't even use it. You will sort of like, I'd say by the end of the campaign, you'll probably be in full legendary gear. It might not be the ideal stats and stuff. So that's another thing that I've done sort of a bit differently. Try and get the numbers right off the top of my head now. Normal items, they can roll either 1 or 2 affixes. Magic items can roll 2 or 3. Rare can roll 3 or 4, and legendary can roll 5 or 6. So you might get a legendary item, but it might not be a 6 affix legendary item. And obviously it might not be the stats you need as well. So finding a legendary is cool, but it's not like a guaranteed, oh, I've won the game sort of thing. And unique items as well. They come in tiers, so you've got tier 1 to 5. Obviously tier 5 drop quite a lot, and then tier 1 are like rare, and then obviously like the higher the tier, the stronger it's meant to be, and higher the boost.
And then
are.
Have you got set items as well?
Yeah, so currently the first boss drop set items. I just implemented them to see if I could, sort of thing. So they're more just like proof of concept. Set items are mostly going to drop in end game. So it'd be kind of like a Grim Dawn style, where the sets sort of like forge 2 different classes together, 2 different skill trees together. Sorry. So you'll have part of the set sort of like boosts the mage, like a mage ability, and then the other part boosts like a warrior ability. So you could use it for either one of the skills or for both at the same time if it fits your build perfectly.
I'm sorry, I'm busy min-maxing my loot filter because I'm going to be a big 2-handed sword guy. When it comes to building set items, obviously it's just a proof of concept stage. Would you want it to be a scenario where full set is kind of like the best way to go, or do you want it to be like a mix of set and uniques, or?
Yeah, so it won't be like Diablo 3 where, everyone wears the same set and then you've got a few choice uniques slotted in here and there. No, it'll be a case of like sets will be sort of like 3 or 4 pieces max. I want it to be a combination of really good legendaries, uniques that fit your build, and a set that fits your build. Ideally. But yeah. Obviously as well, it's one of those things, I really believe in ARPGs that should be about sort of like making your build fit what you found rather than what you find to fit your build. I like that sort of like a solo self-found approach.
And I suppose since you said that you want to have a situation where people aren't just focused on, say, like fire, that also means people are more likely to mix and match their gear sets for like fire and cold or thunder or whatever.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of sort of like damage conversion as well, so you can change a skill to fit your build if you've got the right items. You might have leveled up not using fire at all, so you've disregarded all the fire skills, but then you might find a set item that converts all fire damage to cold damage. So now you've opened up this whole pool of skills that you can suddenly incorporate into your build.
So I feel like we've encountered the first annoying enemy. What's your thought process with enemies that just run away from the player?
Yeah, so this is quite a recent change. I basically made the enemies smarter because originally they were all zombies that just walked towards you, or if you walk towards them, they were like, "Oh, come and kill me." So now ranged enemies have a chance to flee after they've used their attack at you. They'll try and generate more space between you and them. So if you are a melee player, you will have to sort of like chase them around or have a way to get to them quickly, like a teleport or a dash or something like that. It's basically just a bit of a tangent. I heard this really sort of like triggering tweet about 2 years ago from the I forget what she was. She's someone at Diablo 4. I think she's like a lead designer or something like that. And she said, "I don't design enemies to kill the player. I design them to." Oh, what was it? I've messed it up now. No, it was something like, "I don't design them to beat the player. I design them to lose convincingly." Something like that, And no, I design enemies to kill you. Like they're going to do all they can to kill you while being balanced, obviously. So yeah, it was more just about making the AI as intelligent as possible and try and utilize their limited skills in order to beat a player that can do.
That's anything. Fair. So one thing that we get a lot of in Path of X, and obviously this is a much slower paced game, so it might be less of an issue, but when player strength comes so high, it seems to be the main way that the enemies kill the player is through on-death effects. In this game, how do you feel about the treatment of on-death effects? Do you want it to be a case of the enemies kill you while they're actively fighting, or they kill you after the fact?
So currently there's no on-death effects, and I sort of plan on keeping it that way. I think, obviously, like I am a sort of like long-term Path of Exile player myself as well, so I know the frustration of bearers. Yeah, so no, I don't plan on having on-death effects. I think once you've killed an enemy, they should no longer be a threat. It just feels cheap, doesn't it, to die to something that you've already killed. So.
Also, how difficult would it be to... Oh, I think I've gone off the map a little bit. Okay. Let's see how far we can push it. How difficult would it be to implement a move-only option? Because I've gotten so used to that when it comes to PvE, I really struggle when it comes to games where I can't have like move-only bounce left click or something like
that. Yeah, well, all you need to do in that would... Oh no, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I'll add it later. Don't worry.
It's some people will ask about it. Do you have... This is probably very early, no. But like, how do you feel about the idea of adding controller support down the line? Not a priority?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, Steam do make it easy as well. Now, like, you don't even need to really do anything as a dev. They've got that sort of like, I don't know what they call it, some weird Steam controller thing. It's just one of those things I've never really played with a controller myself, so I don't really know what to do with it, I don't know what sort of incentivizes people to play with a controller. I don't know how to make it feel good, So until people sort of give me a breakdown of like, this is why I need a controller, this is how you make it feel good, I don't know.
No, that's fair. And again, it's like, if you open up to early access, then suddenly 90% of your player base are begging for controller, that's going to be more of a focus than, if no one's asking for it,
Yeah, of course. Like, yeah, so far no one has asked me for a controller, so there is no controller. Just in chat, someone said about in D3 sets are basically build enablers, where you only play the playstyle if you have the set. Do your sets have this kind of power, or do they support a build more? They're definitely more supportive. I mean, like, when you get into endgame, when you're in sort of like tier 10 content in Inferno, or you're fighting like the hardest bosses, you probably will want a set that supports your build, because they will, like, they are an in-game item, they are powerful, but it's not a case of like, oh, I found my set, now I can go from Inferno 1 to Inferno 10. They are just a normal item with normal stats. They just enhance your build a bit or push it in a direction that makes it more uniformed. So it's a lot of sort of like bringing skills together and making them more cohesive.
Yep. So one thing that I've noticed is I've kind of been ignoring the quest completely. Can I complete the campaign by just powering through each zone, or what will happen there?
Yeah, you can ignore the quest. You'll miss out on a couple of like attribute points and skill tree points like you do in Path of Exile. But yeah, no, I don't give a crap about quests.
Just generally from like a philosophical point of view, since you say that this is I'm starting to take a lot of damage now. This is going to be like a gameplay focused game, whereas like you're not too focused on having a super important campaign. Would you ever have the option for players who want to bypass the campaign, like they've done it once, they can skip straight through, or?
Yeah. So I'm a big advocate of sort of like the adventure mode in D3. If you die, by the way, you get put back in town. I don't think you've been collecting weight.
No, I don't think so.
You might want to use health potions. You can put them on your hotbar. They should be in your inventory. Yeah, so in terms of adventure mode, I really like that approach. I think once you beat the campaign, you shouldn't have to slog for it again, because campaigns in ARPGs are pretty boring, especially after, like your 100th time of doing it. So I haven't exactly decided how I'm going to handle it yet, but there will be some way of skipping or drastically reducing the amount of time you spend in the campaign once you've already got a character to in-game content. There's a shared stash, so you'll be able to give your character, like really good items, stuff like that. Yeah, there'll be a few different ways to get through it. Not used to talking so much.
Alright. I kind of realized I hadn't spent like any skill points like 20 levels. That might explain why I was suddenly really far, like just suddenly getting beaten up really badly.
Yeah. Yeah. The mastery bar is one of those where putting points in the mastery bar is really useful because it gives you a lot of sort of like core stats. Yeah, like some people do like the campaign. Sorry, just going off chat. Yeah, and I always want to facilitate, people that like the campaign as well. And I have spent quite a lot of time making the campaign like what I feel is a good campaign. So it's definitely there if you want to play it, and it won't be a case of like, oh, you have to use the adventure mode or you have to sort of like skip the campaign, because you can just play it normally. It's not going to be like a massive difference.
I think with that stuff, it's important just to make sure that you're facilitating both playstyles, because that was one thing with Diablo 3 where it's like, once they had adventure mode, you only played adventure mode. There was no real reason to the campaign. So as long as they're not like wildly different in terms of reward, and it's just a personal preference thing, I think it's kind of fine.
Yeah. I think the thing with D3 as well was the campaign took bloody ages. So it was a real slog, whereas this, it doesn't take ages. It's sort of like a 5-6 hour job, I want people to be able to do it in a day. Yeah, so it's going to be the difference of like a couple of hours, either way, or it's like instead of running through the campaign, you're just in an endless arena sort of wave style thing, leveling up at the same rate, but it's just different content.
On that, since this is like a solo self-found kind of oriented loot system, will you be in a scenario where, let's say you're playing a warden, will you be getting like battle mage legendaries dropping?
Yeah, I'm not doing it that sort of solo self-found where you only find items that are good for your class, because I feel like that sort of becomes a bit boring, because part of the excitement of getting a legendary or unique item or something is first it dropping, and then when you realize you can actually use it, it's sort of like that double hit. So no, there won't be anything like that. And the thing is as well, with the shared stash, I want it to be a case of people having multiple characters for multiple different sort of end-game content, so they will need a way to pass gear around.
So is that the sort of system where you imagine most people would just have like one character they play through, or do you very much see this being a game where you have lots of different characters going at once, sort of thing?
So I think it would be a case of people have more than one character, but I don't think it would be a requirement. I think it would be more because I plan on making sort of like the build and play style is so diverse, you'll want to experience the different ways of playing the game rather than being forced into it.
And then when it comes to the legendary items themselves, will they be dropping with set stats, or will there be rolls involved?
So normals, magics, rares, and legendaries drop with randomized stats from a pool. Uniques have handcrafted stats and effects, and same with set items. But in the endgame content, I plan on having a system in which you complete sort of like a dungeon, and at the end you get the ability to upgrade a piece of your gear, and then it'll enhance the stats you have on it. So it's like once you've found an item that you really want, you run through this dungeon and you sort of like make it better. And yeah, I'm open to things like sort of like the enchanting aspect of crafting in Path of Exile as well, where you can mess with the stats on items and things like that.
And then what's your sort of plan when it comes to, you said you might have it in early access for a year or two, like what is, like, if you were to kind of roll out roughly what you imagine the current version of the game to where you'd like it to be is?
Yeah, so at the moment there's no endgame content, it's all just the campaign, and there's only 3 skill trees. By the end of early access there's going to be 6 skill trees, so I think I worked out it's like 16 to 18 classes in total. Then there's going to be a whole host of endgame content, so you're having Inferno difficulty 1 to 10, which would be like the campaign, but a lot harder, and it'll drop like set items, uniques, and all that sort of stuff. And then there'll be endgame content to match that, so you have like dungeons, like tier 1 through 10, and then like arenas tier 1 through 10. Yeah, so I would say content-wise, it's probably maybe about 25% done, but it's kind of like the core 25%, and then after this, it's just like every content patch will be adding sort of like a tier of end game. So it'll be like tier 1 comes first, and then the next patch we've got tier 2, you know, that sort of thing. Yeah, so it'll just be expanding upon what's already there.
Now this could very much be a case of I just skipped the ball without realizing a big part of Titan Quest was having like random chests you could find full of items. Is this going to have random chests that you can be hunting down, or is it just going to be you get what drops off enemies?
Yeah, so initially it'll mostly be not a static playthrough, but it will be a lot more sort of like linear, and then I plan on going down the route of, this is sort of like post-release content now, of doing what Path of Exile do, where every sort of like league or reset or whatever you call it, it'll add sort of like dynamic content to the game, be it sort of like chests or shrines or sort of like encounters with different bosses or whatever it may be.
Now obviously as a solo developer, having realistic expectations and trying to minimize spectacle creep is going to be like a big thing to keep you on track. Do you have anything in mind to try to like, because it's very easy, especially when you get in front of community members and loads of players and you start promising like, oh, we're gonna have all these amazing systems. What kind of plans have you got to keep it realistic in scope?
Yeah, so I think last time I very much got caught up in that, because it's difficult as well, because it's not necessarily you're just saying it because you've got an audience, or you're saying it because you've got a player base or whatever. It's just things that you want to see as a player, you know. It's stuff that you want to experience for yourself. But I think this time around, I've very much limited myself to what I either have already put in the game, I've already developed outside the game, but just haven't put it in the game yet, or I already know how to do it, rather than being like, oh yeah, I'll do that, and then I have to go on Google and figure out how to do it. Yeah, no, so like for the Tempest of Echoes that I've spoken about a few times, I've already created that, it's just not in the game yet. So that's like good to go. And then, you know, like with this endgame content, it's stuff that I've already done before, I know how to do it, it's just a matter of, you know, redoing it. So yeah, there's nothing that I've said that I'm going to put in that I haven't either already created or know how to create, so it's just a matter of time, really.
I've got a couple of friends who've been working on their own projects, and I think that's been one of the most interesting things, watching people who like when they're doing their first game, is they're like, oh, I'm gonna have 50 different classes, 8 passive skill trees, and they talk all this stuff, and then I'll catch it in them like 4 months, and I'm like, hey, so how's that coming along? It's like, yeah, I've stripped all of that. We've gone back to basics. So
Yeah, everyone does it. It's just you've got all these ideas, but it just takes time to put them into practice. Like I always say, I wish I could sort of just clone myself loads of times. So I could be like, have the main Sam who comes up with the ideas, and then I can have like bitch Sam who does all like the data table stuff, and then another bitch Sam who does all like the items. Yeah. It's just scope, scale, and time really, and obviously like finances as well, because like I still need to eat food and that while I'm working on the game.
So yeah, so is this something that you're doing part-time alongside traditional work to pay the bills, or is this like a full-time project? Or
Yeah, so initially, so I think I restarted the project maybe June last year. I started working on it again. I don't know, something like that. And I was working part-time at the time. Then in end of December, early January, I left that job because we had to move. And then I got a job, but I haven't started it yet because I had to get like security clearance and stuff, and it took ages. So I'm due to start that on the 16th of May, and that is a full-time job. So I will go back to part-time development then. But I'm hoping, like, once the game's in early access, like, hopefully I'll have enough sales where I can go back to working like full-time. But it just depends. I can't do what I done last time and sort of like live off nothing, basically. I will need to be making sort of like a normal amount of money every month to be able to go back to full-time.
I mean, it's a big part of making solo dev work is keeping it sustainable. So you don't want to put everything into it and 2 months later run out of funds and have to stop development. And it's you can be more consistent by having more stability in your life as a whole.
Yeah, I tend to work pretty quickly as well, so I'm not too worried about working like part-time. I think I'll still be able to get content patches out every month. Like it won't be that bad. It's not like it's going to be like 6 months for a content patch.
Ooh, this guy looks fancy. So if the plan is to have like roughly like monthly developer patches, how are you planning on staying in contact with the player base? It's going to be like through Discord or Steam pages?
Yeah, mostly Discord. I mean, I talk on Discord pretty much every day, so you just like one shot.
I'm really good at this game.
Oh, it's the bleed stat. Yeah. No, the bosses in the campaign aren't like very hard. I didn't design the campaign with being super difficult. I wanted it to be a case of like everyone can get through it without there being like major problems.
I'm really good, yeah.
And then yeah. Whatever you need to tell yourself. and then end game content, that's when you'll start dying and crying and being like, oh, nerf this, nerf that. What was the question?
It was mostly the like monthly development and then how you stay in contact with the player base.
Yeah. So Discord is the primary way. I chat on Discord pretty much every day, so I'm very sort of like informal, I guess, with the whole thing. Like if people want to ask questions, like I'll normally like reply and stuff. It's like you can't know that. Like I never understood this whole sort of like secrecy that some devs have. Like where it's like you'll get our monthly newsletter or quarterly newsletter, and that's it. Otherwise, we don't talk to you.
Right, I think I need to start getting wisdom. I'm running out of mana. So, with that in mind, one thing I've noticed just from picking stuff up is it seems like I've got pretty much near infinite pickup range.
Yeah. If you hover over something, you can pick it up. I've always found it weird that you had to sort of like stop what you're doing to walk up to an item, and then there's that weird sort of like, am I clicking on it kind of thing. I'm not really one for slowing the player down unnecessarily.
That's been a big gripe in Path of Heck. We've had this thing going on for years where it's like, oh, you're near a ledge. Oh, where's the item?
Yeah. And the whole thing of like, you want us to play at 1,000 miles per hour, but we have to stop to pick something up. Yeah, yeah. There was always that meme, wasn't there, about like picking up loot makes you like slows you down or makes you
The
like
most
weak or
dangerous
whatever.
thing
Like,
in
whereas
Path of Exile is picking up items. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, obviously, you've been taking a lot of inspiration from Grim Dawn and Titan Quest. Out of interest, are there any elements of Grim Dawn and Titan Quest that you've decided to go against when it comes to making this game?
Yeah, so obviously they're really big on storytelling, and I couldn't care less. Yeah, I'd say that's probably the biggest thing. I think Grim Dawn is perhaps maybe the best ARPG currently. Now that they've got sort of like the end game content in there, because I've always said in the past, you know, like Grim Dawn would be so good if only they had end game content. But now they do. So yeah, I really don't think Grim Dawn done anything. As much as I love Path of Exile, and it's a game that I played like way too much, I can highlight a lot of things that I would have done differently with Path of Exile, whereas with Grim Dawn, I can't really think of anything. I just think it's a really, really solid ARPG.
What made you go for the potion system that you did?
So I like Diablo 2, where you have all these like different consumables and stuff. So I'm going to be incorporating that a lot. Where you have like, you know, like poison potions and freeze potions and thorium potions and all that sort of stuff. This is just sort of like tip of the iceberg in that regard. I haven't really delved into it much yet. But yeah, that was the main reason to go for it. It's very sort of like Diablo 2 inspired in that regard. And I feel like I think flasks in PoE, they're really cool when you've got all the different affixes on them, and you know they do all these different things. But I've always hated sort of like the charges system. I think having it on a set cooldown really enables you to plan a lot more. Whereas it's sort of random when your flasks are active in Path of Exile, depending on the density of the map or whatever. Yeah, so I think having that sort of like set cooldown, having it, okay, I've got a potion, I can use it, sort of thing. I don't know, it just makes more sense to me design-wise. And I also dislike sort of like the piano thing that you have to do with PoE flasks in order to stay alive.
So how much automation, because that's a big thing that we see in some of the skills, you get like the automated like chance when you deal damage or chance when you take damage. In your mind, when it comes to like maintaining temporary buffs, because we talk about flasks and Path of Exile, do you want to be a situation where players do have to juggle temporary style buffs, or?
I think a buff should, especially a temporary buff, I think it should be something that you use in the depths of your despair, and then it potentially saves you, it potentially doesn't. I don't think it should be a thing that you have to constantly micromanage in order to beat a normal crab on the beach. Yeah, I think of them as like oh shit buttons rather than every moment is an oh shit moment.
One thing I've noticed is it seems like you could in theory just like run past all the enemies. When it comes to like speeding through the campaign, what would you miss out on if you was just like run past every single enemy?
You get to the end game boss and you get like
Fair enough.
one shot. Yeah. No, I mean, I spoke about him briefly. Justin, he sort of like religiously tests the game for me. He managed to beat the Nightmare boss, the Act 4 Nightmare boss, who's like level 60 something. He managed to beat him on like a level 35 hunter because he used all his pets. But it's like, I wouldn't recommend everyone do that, but it's just like pet build shenanigans, you know, like it's always been a thing that pet builds can just destroy bosses.
I've been picking up quite a lot of gold. What's the main gold sink in this game? Like, what's its purpose?
So there's vendors in towns, and you can like reset them, and you can find cool items there. So that's that's a good sort of gold sink at the moment. You can shop really well in the game. But oh no, you got the bug.
Yeah.
You can just hover over any tooltip because that's already dropped. Yeah, it's just the problem. That bug is just caused by you can automatically send materials to your stash. But when you hover over it and then it auto sort of collects it,
That
it
makes
leaves
sense,
the tooltip there. I can get rid of it. I just haven't done it yet. It's on the to-do list. But yeah, the other gold sink is going to be Goblin's Gift. So when you reach endgame, you're going to save this little nasty little goblin, and he's going to be like, "Oh, I love you now. Here, take my gold, and I'll give you some sort of like buffs." So you'll be able to spend gold on his sort of like his gifts, and they'll give you attribute bonuses and stat bonuses. So it's sort of like the more gold you get, the stronger you get within reason, till you've capped it out.
So when it comes to, obviously the end game isn't in there. I'm currently just kind of doing like one skill, let's go. Is it going to be a situation where people will be doing one skill builds, or would you ideally want players to be like juggling 4 or 5 different abilities, or?
Yeah, so it won't really be sort of like one skill builds. Obviously there will be builds that are one skill builds, but for the most part I design skills to be interactive with each other. Like so for at the moment you're using punish, and the bulk of your damage is coming from the passive Lacerated Soul, which deals bleed damage instantly. So there's another skill on the tree called Lacerate, which applies build stacks, but it's on a cooldown. So you could use Lacerate to apply loads of bleed stacks and then blow them all up with punish. That kind of interaction. And then you've got like your movement skills, your auras, your pets, your buffs. So I would advise people to have a look at the skill tree and check out all the different interactions rather than just sticking with one button. But obviously, like with any ARPG, it takes time to build your character up, and initially you probably will only use sort of like 1 or 2 skills.
Is it just the one town throughout all of the acts, or is it like a different town per act? Or?
No, you're very close to getting to the next town. There's a town at the start of every act. It's just this zone is like Twilight Strand sort of zone where you run the zone before you get to the hub.
And I've noticed like some of the flasks, some of the potions are percentage based. Is it going to be a case of, are you using the same potions you picked up level 1 at level 100, or are there like tiers of potions, or?
Yeah, so at the moment there's only one set of potions in the game. However, there will be tiers of potions, and this is like the bog standard basic potion, but then later on your health potion, it might restore like a portion of your health and then give you some bonus health regen for like 10 seconds or something, And then like you'll have potions that can drop with like different effects as well. So you might have a potion that gives you like a burning aura for 10 seconds.
When it comes to the other ARPGs that are out there currently, you said you've taken a lot of inspiration from Grim Dawn, especially now that has the new endgame system. Are there any systems that have come out in the last couple of years that you've been like, ooh, that's something I'd like to mess around with, or that you've really liked, or?
Yeah, so I really like Last Epoch's approach to skills, and obviously that was the way that I done skills initially in Sanctum Breach. However, I feel like the ARPG market at the moment is a bit stagnant, to be honest. I don't feel like there's a lot of innovation. I think, I don't know, I don't want to speak ill of them. I think with Last Epoch, they kind of hit maybe sort of like a wall in some ways. This is just from a player perspective. I haven't been that infused over the past maybe sort of like year or so. Like I was really hyped for when they added like proper endgame, but I played it and I was just sort of a bit, is this it? So no, I'm very much focused more on the old ARPGs at the moment. I feel like it would be great to see Last Epoch sort of like maybe add a bit more to their in-game system. Obviously, like finally get multiplayer put in, and then like I'll revisit it and see if I can steal things. But for the most part, no, I'm focused more firmly in the past at the moment.
What is it in particular about the more old school ARPGs that really inspires you?
I just think they're so well structured, and they've obviously stood the test of time. So you know they're good. I think when people used to design games, I feel like there was a lot more thought in the initial process and how everything was tied together, because you sort of only had one shot at it. You couldn't once they'd sold that copy of Diablo 2, like before Battle.net and all that, they couldn't be patching it all the time, like they had one chance to get it right, and that was it, sort of thing. Whereas I feel like now there's a sort of like there's a lot more risk in game design. People take a lot more chances, and sometimes they pay off, sometimes they don't. But I feel like overall it leads to a lot of disconnect between the different design systems. I feel like a lot of systems in ARPGs, especially modern ARPGs, they fight against each other rather than cooperating. So I feel like if you want to look at really solid design work, you have to sort of like look at the older games. I mean, obviously, like Path of Exile and Diablo 3 and Grim Dawn and stuff, they're still ongoing games, so I wouldn't necessarily consider them old school. When I say sort of like old school games, I think more sort of like Torchlight 1, Torchlight 2, Diablo 2, Diablo 1, that sort of thing. So I would say I take a mix of sort of like the modern titles like Grim Dawn, Path of Exile, and then sort of like the old school titles like Diablo 2.
So it looks like, just like looking at the crafting stuff now, do you have like access to all the crafting stuff from the get-go, or do you need to find recipes out in the wild, or?
No, you have access to it all from the get-go, but if you look at the materials, they only drop in certain acts. So like you won't find diamond ore yet, you won't find it until you're in Nightmare. And same with the ruins, they drop at different stages of the game.
That makes sense. So it's sort of one of those things that as you're going through, if you happen to be like, oh, I need a new helmet, you can craft, but then at the end game it's looking specifically for certain things that you need. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's try and see if we can get a better helmet. I don't think I've got any silver ore. Let's see, can we do?
Yeah, I think you do. I think you got 23 of it. The one next to the...
I don't have any embroidered cloth there. Is there a place where I can see my materials? Am I just being blind?
They're just in your inventory. If the blue
right,
ones...
okay, so yeah, I've got iron ore and old cloth. Right, fair enough.
You might be able to craft a unique, actually. You've got quite a few ruins there.
Where would the uniques be?
The ruins.
Yep. Blood crown. Okay, I don't have any of that fancy stuff. Ooh, nice. Heart of the Beast, regenerate 3% of maximum life per second. Hey, that's nice. Cool.
Yeah, Heart of the Beast. OP item. No, it is like, if you find that in Act 1, you're set.
I have to say, I'm pretty impressed by the load times. They've been pretty snappy.
Yeah, cheers. Like, no one likes sitting in loading screens. So.
What has been like the main technical limitations you've run into so far in this project?
Not really that many, to be honest. I mean, UE4 is so optimized these days. Unless you're doing something drastically wrong, you're not going to break it, unless you're trying to loop through like 3 million iterations in 1 second, you're going to be okay. Yeah, so in terms of actual technical limitations, I really wouldn't say there's too many. It's not like the old days, where you have to design for sort of like 1 gigabyte graphics cards and 256 megabytes of RAM. Like, people have good computers, they can handle it. Yeah, the real sort of technical limitations come with multiplayer. you've got to handle all like the replication, you've got to handle corrupted saves, you've got to handle sort of like potential desyncs, like rubber banding, all that sort of stuff. So single player's easy.
So in terms of performance, I know there's not a proper endgame system, but like if I was to stand in the middle of like 100 enemies, would I be having this kind of FPS, or would I be getting drops, or?
Yeah. No, you'll be fine. You can pull like a whole
Okay, we'll
map
give it.
if you
Okay.
want.
Well, we've got unit collision. I haven't got any like
mean,
movement skills, so we might struggle getting a whole map.
Yeah. Yeah, no, once you get past this bit, you'll be fine. It's a bit, it opens up into like a big open space then, so it should be okay. I mean, you probably will get a bit of sort of like stutter, but it's not going to be a case of where you're locked down for like 5 seconds, I don't know if you played Hero Siege, but where it slows down to sort of like 5 FPS when you've got like a whole portal of enemies on you. It won't be that bad.
What made you go for unit collision, just out of interest?
So I feel like if you don't have unit collision, it feels weird. I don't think it feels natural to be running through loads of enemies. And also, if you sort of like have unit collision enabled by default, when you have something that removes it, it feels really impactful, and it sort of becomes build enabling for certain builds. Like for sort of like spin to win, if you remove unit collision, you're like invincible. It's just that kind of sort of like ethical approach, I guess you want to call it.
That makes sense.
I used Unreal for this. I haven't.
Do you like pets and friendly companions also have the same collision, or?
Yeah, so they have collision, but it's very small. It's smaller than this, so you will clip with them, and you can do weird, unspeakable things.
Okay.
For them.
So you're not going to have a scenario where you randomly get stuck in a corridor because you're surrounded by your own skeletons or whatever?
No, you shouldn't do. I mean, if you do, send me a video and I'll laugh. No, you shouldn't do. I mean, you can get surrounded, like, how they're all like trying to collapse in on you now. They can surround you like that, but they will always try and leave a small path for you to escape from. If you play it smart.
So out of interest, since we did talk a little bit about stuff that some of the older games are doing, have you been following the Diablo 2 Resurrected stuff at all, since they're now patching what was an older ARPG?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to play it yet, just because I've been sort of so busy with this. But I used to play a lot of Path of Diablo.
Yeah.
I think you played it as well, didn't you? Yeah, so I loved that, and I will play Diablo 2 Resurrected. I just think it looks really cool, but I can't put my finger on what makes it look. So it looks really like crisp, doesn't it? I don't know what they've done to make it look like that. Like all the skills, they look really I don't even know the word for it. I don't know. Like, I'm not really an art guy, so I don't really know like all the terminology in that. But it looks really you know how like with Path of Exile and with like Sanctum Breach and stuff, and like all ARPGs, all the skills look a bit sort of like I don't know. It's not stylized, but a bit sort of like pixelated. Yeah. But with Diablo 2 Resurrected, it almost looks like when you get like visual effects in films, like when they use like fire in films, it kind of looks like that. It's like really like clean. So yeah, I'm like super impressed with the art for Diablo 2 Resurrected. It's like I don't know how they've done it. I bow down to them. Yeah. No, I don't know what engine they used either. I don't know if they like have got their own or something.
So with the art for Sanctum Breach, is that a situation? Is there like a particular artist that you've been commissioning stuff from? Are you buying it from store places or?
I buy it from the store at the moment. I use sort of like the same one, so it's consistent. Like there's a person that does like all the enemies. There's a person that does all the skills, and then if I do ever want anything specific, then I'll just commission it. But it's one of those things, like it's what I was saying earlier, like Unreal Engine 4 is so heavily supported. There's thousands of assets on the marketplace. Like there's always going to be something there for you to use. And I know sometimes people are like, oh, it's just like an asset flip or whatever you want to call it. But it's like at the end of the day, there's very, very few people that play ARPGs because it looks pretty.
Yeah.
You know, it's more about the gameplay, and I think as long as the assets fit and it's not jarring because you're fighting like a rainbow unicorn in a
Yeah.
swamp, it's going to be okay.
That is always one thing I do find quite funny. I play a lot of early access indies on Steam, and you can tell that there's been zero like consistent art direction with some of the stuff they buy. You're fighting like an anime robot one second, then like a really dirty pixel image thing the next. You're like,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as long as you're consistent, I don't think people will give you too hard of a time for using stuff that other people have created. I mean, everyone is in the same boat anyway. Even if you're an artist on your on your team, you know, like they've created it, you haven't. So,
what's the second skill tree? I can check that for real quick. So we're the warden, so we have the mix between the warrior skill tree and the hunter skill tree. What's the maximum level in this game again? Sorry.
even 99 or 100, I haven't decided.
So like, how many skill points would that be to play with at the end of it?
I haven't worked out exactly because you start off getting 3, and then I think it goes to 2 at about level 35, and then it goes to 1 at like level 70, and then you get some from additional quests as well. But I think all in all is when I've played like loads of characters to the end of Nightmare, you know, like properly. You've got enough to max out both skill trees, and then I've maxed out some skills as well. So I think, you know, you've probably got about 150 odd points to play with.
And
maybe a bit
will
more.
there be items which have skills on them as well, or?
Yeah, so there's some uniques that have a chance to proc a certain rank of a certain skill, or there's you won't be able to see it because it's on the mage tree, but on the mage tree, you know, you've got the attribute bonuses. With some of them, like you could be casting Thunderstorm, and if you've got enough wisdom, it's got a chance to proc your Storm Strike, so you can cast other skills off of your skill, kind of like a cast on skill kind of thing.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah. So with the design approach for Mage was very much sort of like that classical D&D sort of like tri-element Mage, where they use like they use the different elements to sort of like manipulate the enemy and the surroundings, you know, like they work in tandem.
What decisions have you made, if any, to try and maintain some sort of parity between like melee and range builds in this?
So I've split the source of their damage quite a lot. So with spells, you need a certain player level to level them up. If you go,
I think
on
I
a
actually
skill
noticed
tree
that
whenever you
with
can.
this. I was like,
Gladiator style. It's a spell, so you'll notice you need a certain level. It's got a level requirement, and the damage of that level requirement is on par with the weapon that I expect you to have at that stage of the game. So there's sort of like that, kind of like in Path of Exile, you know, where your skills can only level up so far, and their base damage is equivalent to sort of the weapon you would have at that stage. That's mostly what I've done, but obviously then there's like factors as well of sort of like you're typically safer if you're a spellcaster because you're further away. So melee have that sort of like bulky advantage of like, you know, like with Punish, it gives you a block chance, buff, that kind of thing. And a lot of the melee skills have built-in sort of like life leech, like the Berserker stance, the spin to win. It gets life leech based on your strength.
I've noticed there's been a mix with like some consumables. I think all consumables from crafting tools have got auto pickup. Is that correct?
Yeah, you auto pick up materials and consumables and gold, and then there's an option in the filter to automatically send them to your stash if you didn't want them in your inventory.
So a big thing that we have in terms of like discussions, and we do have Path of Exile developers on, is we've spoken a little bit before about like with the inventory space, but the idea of they don't really want auto pickup in that game. Why are you okay with auto pickup for some items and not others in this one?
So I think like if it's a material or consumable, it's always going to be a 1x1 typically on the grid. So it's small, and it also is something that's universally usable. Whether or not you end up using it is another matter, but it's something that always has a universal use, whereas certain items are completely useless to you, and they take up more space. So I feel like picking up an item should very much be a choice. You want to hover over it, you want to see it. Sorry, if it's got cool stats, you want to see if it's usable. Whereas with a material is kind of like, yeah, I'm probably going to craft later. I'll take it, and you don't want to be clicking all the time to pick everything up, because it just slows everything down. I think there is an option in in the settings to turn off auto pickup though, if you don't like having it on. I very much tried to do that a lot this time around, where I give the player options, choices as to how they want to play.
Oh, fatal error. Oh.
I hate this zone with a burning passion. I am so tempted to just delete
Okay,
this
go
zone
on.
from the game, right? I have no end of trouble with this. It's the only zone in the game that crashes, right? I've looked into it for so many hours. Seriously, like I should have told you to go. There's literally another way you can go through the act because of this zone. When you're back in the town, go the other way. Don't go
I do like the
again.
idea that you have a zone that causes problems, so you make a separate way to go around it. So, do you genuinely have like no idea what it is about that particular zone that causes the issue then?
I have no idea. If anyone can figure it out, like I have no idea. Like seriously, I've looked at the code so many times. It's so basic as well. Like there's nothing that could possibly go wrong with it. Like it's so simple. It's just some assets. There's no code in it. Like how can it crash when there's no code in it? The only thing that I could think of that it being is that it loads quite slowly, so it tries to access your player data while your player
Right.
data is saving. So it creates a null pointer, and if it creates a null pointer, then it will sort of like flip out. But it's not even that because I've tried to go through it with saving disabled, so it'll just reset me back to level 1. It still crashes, and it doesn't always crash. Sometimes it's fine. So I don't know. I'm giving up with it. I'm going to delete it and just remake it, I think.
I mean, I'm glad we managed to get some things in there. We don't want the game to look too smooth. Right, so which way am I meant to be going? Up this way?
Yeah, go up. Oh, good, just go away for stream delay. Yeah, up there. Follow the pretty water to your salvation.
What sort of... Because I've noticed there's been quite a lot of diversity in enemy types. Do you have like a rough idea of how many different models you've got in the game currently?
No. No, I don't know. I just stick in as sort of as many as I can, really. Yeah, I just try and have a couple of different enemies per zone, so you're not running into the same stuff all the
time. What's your general philosophy when it comes to like reusing assets? Is it like lots of color flipping in the end game, or different enemies completely?
No, I'd prefer different enemies if possible. Like, obviously, sometimes you have to reuse the assets, and like, like the skeletons that you fought in the very first zone in the graveyard, they come back in the Act 2 endgame zone. Not endgame zone, like the final zone of Act 2. They come back in that. So I do it sometimes if it's sort of like thematic and makes sense. Like, you're running into different factions of orcs in Act 3, so like they'll be in one map and then they'll be in another map, but they'll have like different skills and stuff. So yeah, I don't mind doing stuff like that. I just think it's a bit lazy sometimes, when it's like skeleton 1, skeleton 2, skeleton 3, skeleton 4, and they just fire a different coloured arrow that deals with a different bit of damage.
Okay, so this is the edge of the map, so let's not go that way. So
Have you?
Do you know how many zones you have roughly in each act? I'm just asking you really annoying specific questions at the moment, sorry.
That's alright. I know there's 33 in total. I don't know exactly the distribution. I think I know the last Act 4 is 4 zones because it's really short, but it's like big zones, you know. It's that sort of like, oh, I've come to the end now. I think Act 2 is the longest, which is the one you're in currently. Act 1 is quite long as well, but that's only because you're weak and it takes you ages to kill stuff at the start. I think it's like 6, maybe like 9, 7, and then 4, and then like you've got the 4 hubs as well. So I don't know.
And then I know it's not in yet, but when you do the end game, so will the end game zones be completely different to stuff you had in the campaign, or?
Yeah, so you'll be able to play through the campaign again using the Inferno slider. So, say you really like farming this particular zone, you could come back on like Inferno 1 and, you know, Inferno 2, Inferno 3, and you might try and find like a specific unique that drops from those enemies, or a specific set item that drops from those enemies. But then on top of that, you also have like the traditional end game where you'll go to an end game hub, and from there you'll be able to, you know, enter all these different end game sort of like maps and arenas and stuff like that. I've got to be right back in a couple of minutes. I just need the loot.
What would be, before you head off real quick, what would you say is the thing that you're most excited for players to see if they try out this game when the early access is available to them?
So I think just the diversity in different skills and builds and stuff. Like I've put a lot of time into obviously like the different skill trees and that, and the combinations of play styles that you can have. So I think like obviously like the core for me of ARPGs is sort of diversity and being able to play in a way that suits you. So yeah, I'm just really interested for people to try different builds out and see what they can come up with. I like seeing, you know, like videos of people showcasing their builds and stuff. So. Right.
That's right.
Be right back.
So while he's away, chat, if you've got any questions, either for me playing the game, like asking how it feels to play, or questions you want me to ask Sam when he gets back, just hit me up with them and I'll go through them. I do have to say, I have been quite enjoying the pace. I've personally been a big fan of playing games like Titan Quest specifically. I don't know why Titan Quest I get on with a lot more than Grim Dawn in my PvE downtime. I do generally prefer the more, not necessarily slower, but like the more considered pace when it comes to ARPGs. I think there's just something quite, not even like quaint, but I don't know, there's something more satisfying about it. How's the movement? Movement's been okay. I do notice the unit collision, but that's like intended, and we've just picked up this charge ability, which seems to be... Let's see if we can charge if we're completely surrounded. I don't know how exactly that works. These are all ranged enemies. Let's see if we can get surrounded by a bunch of big melee dudes and see how that feels. But it's generally been pretty smooth. My main ability is sort of name-locky to a degree, so there's a little bit of having to line that up. Like if my ranges aren't quite right, I kind of like swing at nothing. But for the most part, the combat and everything's felt pretty smooth. And also, if you see like enemies T-pose, I'm pretty sure that's because I've got chance to stun. I think that's from me stunning enemies.
Yeah, the T-posing is from stunning. I haven't got separate animations for them yet for like a stun animation.
What made you want to tie movement speed to dexterity as a stat choice? I feel like movement speed is always really dangerous in ARPGs.
Yeah, so movement speed in AoE is sort of like the pinnacle of potential destruction in ARPG builds. So I put a cap on it. You can only go so fast and you can only have so much extra AoE. However, certain skills can break that wall. So like with the charge skill that you've got at the moment, that can break the movement speed wall. And then like skills that have AoE modifiers on their passives or on their attributes, they can break the AoE wall. Yeah, so in terms of having dex be the movement speed, sort of like multiplier. It just sort of fit with that notion. I think like strength. When I think of strength in sort of like D&D sort of terms, it's the
speed
big
hack.
bulky characters.
I don't know how I did it.
Yeah, I don't know what's
That was good.
going
I liked
there.
that.
Yeah, well done. You should give up the streamer life. Just be a playtester.
QA. Yeah.
Yeah, no. Strength is sort of like is the big bulky characters, you know. So it makes sense to have sort of like the base damage with your weaponry, and then Dex is sort of like the quick, sort of like nimbleness, so like the movement speed, and then like the AOE just sort of felt like it complemented that sort of like in and out play style, where you don't have to be as accurate with your sort of like skill placement because you've got that extra AOE to compensate. And then sort of like wisdom is that typical, you know, like D&D caster, sort of like spell caster archetype. So yeah, it's very much just play into the RPG sort of stereotypes.
So we don't play through the whole campaign and spoil everything. I'd probably say if we try and wrap up in the next sort of like 15. So are there any like real key points that you want to touch on yourself? Because obviously you know the game better than anyone at this point.
Yeah, so I think it's very much a case of like this is tip of the iceberg. You know, like although I've put obviously a lot of time and effort in thus far, endgame is where I really sort of like want to spend the majority of my time and focus. So the campaign is very much sort of like this is the baseline of what you're going to get, and then it's only going to get better from here. You know, like there will be more like time and polish and refinement in the end game. Yeah, I'd say that's probably the biggest thing.
And then, do you have like a rough timeline of when? Because I know the early access is coming soon, but you haven't got a set date. Do you roughly know when you want that out by?
I do. I hadn't planned on saying, but tomorrow. Yeah. It's one of those things, right? I've been sort of like quote unquote ready for a couple of weeks now, but it's really difficult, right? So when you've created something, there's always this sort of like hesitation to release because you always know that you've got more to do. Because obviously when you release to early access, it's not done, so it's like there's no sort of like set marker of when it can be in early access.
If it makes you feel any better, I've been helping a friend of mine with a game. I've just been doing like some QA stuff for him, and he's been in that state for like 2 months now, where he's like, I could technically drop it today, but getting that initial first impression, it's so precious. Obviously, like you're opening yourself up to so much criticism as well, you know.
Yeah, of course, it's very much like that, you know, like you don't want people to play it and then be like, oh, this is shit, why have you released? But at the same time, you don't want to drag it out and out and out because you're potentially hurting yourself, because you could be having revenue coming in, you know, you could be like in my case, like if I had more revenue, I plan on like hiring an artist to overhaul the UI, you know, so like I could potentially be delaying that and delaying like potential feedback, you know, like all these sort of things. So yeah, it is very tricky as to when is a good time to release.
I mean, the feedback thing is a big one, because especially when you're at the point where the main thing you need is just more testers, then by delaying that, you know, you're just kind of stretching out your work, you know, what you could achieve in a month to 3 months and everything, you know.
Yeah, but then people on Steam at me, you know, if they encounter a bug, thumbs down.
It's a difficult thing, that. How do you feel about the current Steam review thing, having gone through it once before originally with the original version of Sanctum Breach?
I don't think it's as drastic as people make out. I don't think it's make or break. I mean, look at Walker. They had like dreadful reviews. I mean, that is probably the sort of like the hardest I've ever seen a community go in on a game, you know, and yet they still sold loads of copies. People still played it. People still talked about it. Like, and people still gave them a chance at redemption. I mean, they screwed it up, but they gave them the chance, you know. So I don't think it's as drastic as I previously thought it was and is. However, it doesn't feel nice when you've spent sort of like a year of your life devoted to something when, you know, you could have, you know, like been working elsewhere and sort of like saving, you know, like whatever, spent your money on whatever, you know. So yeah, when people criticize something you've spent so much time on, it is sort of like you do need to get used to it. That aspect of sort of like people criticizing you and your product, but at the same time, you know, you're not going to please everyone. So even if you had, you know, like what you considered to be the best game possible, you know, and you've done everything that you want and it's bug free and all that, people are still going to not like it. So I think, yeah, you just need to try and not be precious about it and just understand that some people, you know, they don't know quality.
And then also when it comes to other content creators who might be interested in Sanctum Breach and maybe like doing interviews with you like we've done here, what would be the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Pigeon post. Yeah, probably the best way. No, just on Discord or email, sanctumbreach@hotmail.com. Yeah, YouTube, whatever, Twitter. I'm always about on the socials.
All right. Well, in that case, I think I'll get to the end of this zone and we can wrap it up there.
Sounds good.
And again, just to be clear,
Thanks
the
for
reason that I've gotten through is because I'm really good at this game, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, of course.
Right. Just before we go though, do you have any general advice for other indie devs out there, solo devs especially?
I think take your time. Understand that it's going to take years, and really sort of like think about why you're making a game and why you want to make a game. If it's sort of like the lifestyle you want to live, because it's not without its stresses, you know, like even, and think about it like this as well, like even if you make it, that's when your real work sort of begins, because then you've got a massive player base, hopefully, you know, and once you've made X amount of money, people stop pulling their punches. You're no longer indie. So yeah, I think really just think about it, and then if you thought about it and you still want to do it, then I think you'll be fine, because it is just having that dedication, you know, and that sort of like determination. Just like it's with anything creative, you just need to stick at it and persevere.
All right. Well, in that case, Sam, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and I hope everyone checks out Sanctum Breach Rebirth.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I can't wait for all the bug reports.
Right, so I'll cut that there and throw that onto YouTube. I think that went really well. I'm impressed. I was expecting more bugs.
Was you? I was as well, to be fair. Like we've been playing the shit out of it, like, right? But I was still. There's always that thing, like when people like are playing your game, you're just sitting there, sort of like I'm sitting on my hands, like, oh, don't be a bug. And when you were coming up to that Lost Ruins, and I was like, oh fuck that zone, fucking burn it, right? When you were coming up to it, I was thinking, don't fucking crash.